Hi, in this video we're going to talk about a protagonist character. This is typically your main character, the hero of the story, and probably one of the characters that you're going to spend the most time with, at least inside their head. You should have a very thorough understanding of this character, what motivates them, and where they're headed, what their goals are. You should have a backstory fleshed out for them. You should know anything and everything about this character before you start writing. So your protagonist or your hero of the story isn't the only, we'll say, good guy of the story. He usually has a team of other characters with him or her. One of which is usually a mentor character of some kind. You know, maybe it's a teacher or a family member, but it's some sort of a guide that kind of moves them from where they are to where they want to be and be kind of their mental compass, if you will. So let's take, for example, I have a couple of different examples that I use. In Lord of the Rings, you know, your protagonist is Frodo, and his mentor is Gandalf, who kind of leads him along the way. In Star Wars, you could say Luke Skywalker being the protagonist, and you could say Obi-Wan or even Yoda would be his mentor, kind of teaching him the differences of right and wrong and guiding him along a path. Typically, there's a love interest. There doesn't always have to be one, but keep in mind that a love interest could potentially be someone other than a romantic love. You could be talking about a brother and sister, a family member, a very close friend. You could even say a love interest could be, in the case of the Lord of the Rings, Frodo and his relationship with the ring. It's kind of overwhelming, and he just loves, you know, it's almost like a love relationship with an object in that case. And for Luke Skywalker, obviously, it's kind of his love for his sister in the story instead of a romantic love in that case. There's usually is a sidekick to every story, a best friend, if you will. So again, Frodo has his Samwise, and Luke has Han, kind of their sidekick, if you will. And that kind of rounds out your main party. Now, there are other tertiary characters that, of course, you want to introduce. They'll be less developed than those main characters. Keep in mind that each of these characters have their own goals and motivations, and they can't all be the same. If you're creating perfect characters in a perfect world that always agree, your story is going to be exceedingly boring. If you've ever worked on any kind of a group project, you know that not everybody gets along. And it is okay for the other characters who are on the side of the protagonist trying to help them succeed to have doubts and or argue with the protagonist and not agreeing with what's happening or what they're doing. And that's okay. Not everybody agrees. And so to have that tension and conflict is just going to add additional flavor to your story. So those are some important characters to focus on and kind of what to think about whenever you're trying to develop them. And when you think about people's characters' goals and their pasts, think about how they might conflict with one another. You know, what may come up in the story that these two characters don't get along, and if they end up having an argument, how are they going to respond? Is one going to dig in their heels and refuse to apologize? Is one going to be very apologetic? Are they both going to be hard-headed? Is there going to be a cooling off period? You know, how dramatic is it going to be depending on the topic? You know, you might have a small conflict, or you might have a really big one if their core values are challenged by the other characters. And I think that that's a good way to think about your interactions between at least that side of the story, I'll say the hero side of the story.